Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'd like to begin this event with an acknowledgement of Pride Month. In honor of the month of Pride, Olympia Indivisible is committed to a societal vision of inclusion, welcome, and safety for all people, and in this commitment to our beloved community. We commit to show up and stand with our fellow LGBTQIA friends, family, and neighbors. I would also like to read a land acknowledgement that is adapted from the Race and Pedagogy Institute and the Puyallup Tribe. We acknowledge that this event is based on the traditional homelands of the Stay-Trask people, the Nisqually tribe, the Squaxin Island tribe, and the Coast Salish and the Chute-Seed speaking peoples, who have lived on and stewarded these lands since time immemorial. Despite being the targets of invasion, occupation, and displacement by white settlers, leading to centuries of trauma, the Stay-Trask people have extended to us the courtesy of a welcome to their home. We are guests and beneficiaries of this welcome. Through this acknowledgement, we signal our participation in the necessary project of reimagining the social contracts between Native people and the rest of us who have shown up through different routes to these Native nations. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is one small step towards true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the Indigenous people of this land and beyond. I would now like to introduce OI Steering Member Melinda Holman, who will introduce our guest for the evening, Thurston County Auditor Mary Hall. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Grace. That was Grace Plaisted, a member of our steering committee. And again, my name is Melinda Holman, and it is my honor to introduce Thurston County Auditor Mary Hall. Mary will be speaking about myths and realities rising out of the 2020 presidential election, as seen from the perspective of electoral civil servants. Much of the fallout from election 2020 can be traced to misinformation and disinformation, which has crossed the divide from conspiracy theory, unfortunately, to the mainstream media. The result of this is a dangerous decline of voter confidence in the election process. With all of this swirling around us, we know of no one better to provide a clarifying, fact-based perspective than Thurston County Auditor Mary Hall. We've also asked Mary to address the impact that this misinformation and disinformation has had on her staff and her coworkers across the country, and how we as citizens can help to alleviate the resulting atmosphere of stress and fears in which too many electoral civil servants now work. Mary's presentation will be followed by a question and answer period, and she welcomes questions. Before she begins, a brief word about our county auditor. Mary Hall is an award-winning elections administrator and leader, known for partnerships and innovations. Mary has over 3 decades of professional leadership experience in the corporate and government sectors. First elected Thurston County Auditor in 2013, her electoral administrative career began in Pierce County in 1996. She received her national certification in elections administration in 2004 through Auburn University and the Election Center. In 2018, Mary partnered with the Department of Homeland Security to expand our county's cybersecurity. That partnership is ongoing and today includes a state auditor's audit and mandatory countywide cybersecurity training. Mary was awarded the 2020 Auditor of the Year award in recognition of her work during the COVID-19 pandemic. She led her team to quickly open a drive-through voting center on the campus of the South Puget Sound Community College. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Thurston County Auditor Mary Hall, even if she can't hear our clapping. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you very much for that great welcome. I need to shorten my bio. It truly is an honor to be here. I am passionate about this work, and I think about my career and how it has morphed since 1996. I can't begin to tell you, and I don't know how many of you are watching the hearings today, but today has been especially difficult for me because I'm watching my colleagues across the country, and it just brings back a lot of what we went through during those months after the election and what's still happening and being said out there today. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2020 election. It truly was the most secure and successful election this country has ever seen, not just here, but across the country. I'm going to talk about our current state, what we're dealing with and how we're dealing with it. There is definitely an information war. I'm going to talk about that, the new threat landscape, and also about election transparency and security. In 2016, we were mostly faced with foreign misinformation on Facebook. You didn't know if what you were reading was true or not. In 2020, it was mainly from domestic sources that were spreading the misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, with some exceptions. I mean, Iran and Russia had some things happening, but for the most part, it was from within this country, meant to divide. And it's a part of the business model for social media platforms, which is really a shame. Facebook likes engaging content, those strong headlines and things like that. And I don't think they're doing a good enough job monitoring that and taking it down, but that's a whole different issue. We talk a lot about mis, dis, and malinformation, so I'm going to explain the difference between these three terms. So misinformation is really unintentional. You might see a headline or somebody wrote an article and they get an inaccurate photo, or the date's wrong, or statistics wrong, or something like that, or it's when satire is taken seriously. Disinformation is intentional. It's created to create conspiracy theories, rumors, and quite often it's fabricated or deliberately manipulated audio and visual content, and certainly taking a lot of things out of context when they write stories. Malinformation, is publishing knowingly wrong information with the intent to cause harm. And unfortunately, we have a lot of that going on right now, right in Washington state. They further promote conspiracy theories, and really what they're doing is working to create division, which unfortunately this country right now is very divided because of all the mis, dis, and malinformation we're receiving. But really, fraud doesn't exist in this country. And I get really frustrated because the media says, well, there's no evidence of major voter fraud. Well, it still sounds like there's fraud, and there isn't. There were 17 cases of suspected voter fraud in King County in 2020 out of 1.2 million votes cast. I mean, that's microscopic, but no major fraud insinuates that there's more than just a tiny, tiny bit. So I wish they would phrase it, and if you phrase it this way, that would be helpful. The amount of voter fraud is microscopic. It's just not there. There are no proven cases. If there were proven cases, they would be front page, they would be on Fox News, they would be everywhere, and they're not. We actually experienced some misinformation in the 2020 election. This is a picture this was taken at Capitol Mall. So this showed up on a Facebook group. It's called Olympia Looks Like Crap. It used to be a public group, but it's now a private group. It's rancid stuff. But they posted that somebody had stolen one of our ballot boxes. It looks identical to our ballot box. But what this is a Grays Harbor County auditor's truck. Pierce County was surplusing some of their drop boxes because they put in bigger boxes. So he went and picked one up, stopped at Dick's Sporting Goods store, and the rest is history. So we were fortunate that we found this really early in the morning. My person is an early riser and got on Facebook, and I don't know how he gets alerts, but he found this right away, contacted Facebook, and it was down within a few hours. It only had 47 comments and 25 shares, which may seem like a lot, but it's minuscule. And it was only up there for a few hours. And really, when you're dealing with misinformation, you have to respond quickly. If 24 hours goes by, you're done. But Facebook did take it down. And what's great when they do that is it not only disappears from that place that it was posted, it disappears from every place it was shared and talked about. So they really have the power to do a lot more. And even though we have a direct connection to them, they have regional people that focus just on elections. They don't trust us enough to really believe what is fake information. So there were a lot of lies in the general election. I hate the word forensic because the word forensic implies that there was criminal intent. So they're talking forensic audits, and it's amazing how they're so good at these trigger words. They want a hands-on audit of all elections. Well, we do that 3 times during every election. But forensic audits, there's no industry standard. We don't even know as election administrators what that really means. So we need that term to go away. And if you remember back in 2020 or following the 2020 election, how all of the election administrators in Arizona were digging their heels in as there was no way they were going to turn over those ballots. And the reason they were so adamant about that is because they would have been violating their oath of office. It is a federal crime to give ballots to anybody who requests them. I mean, they have to be retained physically by election officials themselves or under the direct administrative supervision. And we are getting a ton of requests for that, still getting requests for that, not in the paper ballots, but what they're wanting are what are called cast vote records. But that is the same thing as a ballot per state law. And it really is, because it tells you how every ballot was counted. And you can, if you're really good at research, you can potentially tie it back to the person. So we cannot release this information. For federal elections, it's a federal crime. In other elections, it's a state crime. So, but we're still getting public records requests every single day. I think we got 5 today. We do a tremendous amount of pre-testing, and I almost have to chuckle, but it's also frustrating when they say they need to audit, they need to do audits. I listened to some candidates running for positions similar to mine who are, saying audit, audit, audit. Well, we do audit. We test the programming and accuracy of our tabulation system before every election. And we do this before any ballot goes out, even military ballots, which go out 45 days prior to the election. And once we test that, and we test, and then there's a test with the Secretary of State's office, then we seal these machines with tamper evident seals, and we lock them up, and they're not open until we start scanning ballots. So we know how the results are going to come out of these tests because we mark a test deck, and it's a predetermined result. So if they don't come out that way, it's usually because of human error, because you accidentally marked a ballot wrong, which in a countywide race is like, it's time consuming to track it down, but it always proves out if there's an error that it's human error in marking the test deck. We also do 2 different random audits after election day. The first one is a precinct audit. We randomly select precincts before election day. And the day after the election, we actually take a precinct batch and we scan the ballots and we print the results. Then we give it to a team of 2 who hand count the ballots and they compare the results. And again, they've always matched. When they don't, it's human error in ballot inspection. There might be a stray mark in the target area that a ballot inspector didn't pick up. But in my 26-year career, there might have been something weird that happened in Pierce County in one recount, but they're always spot on. And so are our hand recounts, by the way, which is another audit that we do in close races. This is a new type of audit that's taken off across the country. It's called a risk limiting audit. And this is basically a statistical sampling of ballots. So we roll a 8-sided dice, and it tells you how many ballots you're going to pull. And you literally will pull like 2 ballots from this box, 3 ballots from that box, 2 ballots from this box over here. And we may have 200 boxes in an election. And the number of ballots you pull is based on the margin of error. So if it's a wide margin of error, you may only pull 60 ballots. If it's a really tight race, you may pull 1,000 ballots. And then we hand count those and look at the cast vote records and ensure they match. So we look at the ballot, we look at the cast vote record, and they match. Now, this is taking off across the country, Colorado, Rhode Island, Virginia, and it's becoming more popular. Require it statewide. It's optional in Washington, but we in Thurston County do this audit, and many other counties are joining in as well. Here's another trigger word, trafficking. What do you think of with trafficking, right? Sex trafficking, ballot trafficking. What the heck is it? You know, an unsafe ballot boxes. And what they're saying is that all of these people, you know, collected all of these ballots and stuffed the ballot box. And there's a movie that's out, I think it's called 10,000 Mules or something like that, where they actually use cell phone data and say, yeah, the same person was going to this drop box. Well, the person probably drove by the drop box, worked by the drop box. It's a crazy theory, but it's taking off and people are believing this movie. It's really crazy. And the thing you have to understand is each and every one of you on this Zoom call could turn in 10 ballots, but you know what? We're only going to count one. And then you're going to get a nasty letter from the prosecutor. But because we check the signature against the signature on every ballot envelope. And when your ballot gets scanned in, it goes on a sorter where it reads the barcode and takes a picture of your signature. At that point in time, your ballot is checked in and no other ballot with your voter ID number on it can actually get through. And it doesn't matter if it's in Thurston County or they're up in Snohomish County or Pierce County, or they're, you know, registering same day across the state. Only one ballot will be accepted. And, you know, turning a ballot in for someone else, they're saying, well, that person turned in 5 ballots. It's legal in Washington state. You know, if you have a family, you're going by the drop box, got 4 voting people in your house, it's fine to take all 4 ballots and put them in the drop box. But that's what they're calling ballot trafficking. It's crazy. And they're trying to get a law passed that that's not allowed. But there are a lot of like churches and groups that have what they call ballot parties, where they all get together, they talk about the issues of candidates, and they vote their ballots. And one person may say, hey, I'm right by a drop box, I'll take them down. That is perfectly legal. The new thing, there's a group out there called the Voter Integrity Group. I don't know if you've read any articles about the groups that are going door to door. It started in Skagit County. We were the second ones. It's head up by a guy named Glenn Morgan. I don't know if that name's familiar or not. What they're doing is going around knocking on doors. A lot of people are thinking they're county employees, but this group is claiming that our voter rolls are wrought with fraud, that we have all of these fake voters, illegal voters on the rolls. So they're going door to door asking people how long they've lived there, because what they did when they downloaded our database and, you know, looked at how many people at a household are voters, there might be couples with 2 different names, you know, John and Sue Smith, Barry and Margaret Johnson. Well, we have a lot of UOCAVA voters. UOCAVA means military and overseas voters in this county. And federal law says that military voters can register or claim their home of record wherever they want it to be. So if they own a house and they're renting it out now and they're now in Washington, D.C. or overseas, they can still register at that household. So when we did our analysis, that was a lot of what we found, and also inactive voters. We do so much list maintenance. I would say we probably have one of the most accurate databases of any government agency anywhere, because we bounce it off of so many things. When you register, we bounce it off the Social Security Administration, Department of Licensing. We have a multi-state matching program called ERIC, which they're also attacking. Some people are attacking it and other people say they should use it. Well, we are participating, all counties, it's a statewide thing. So we get lists from the state on a regular basis that show us, well, you've got this person registered here, and this person in Colorado has the same exact name, exact date of birth. So you may want to check those out. So then we will do research. We compare signatures, see if they match. Quite often they don't. Similar names are common. I grew up with the name Mary Johnson. How many Mary Johnsons are there in the world? And yes, some people have the same date of birth. We also use the Post Office National Change of Address Program. We do that on a monthly basis. And then we go a step further and also use what's called address change service. So anytime we mail out ballots for an election, if there was a ballot that was forwarded to somebody, meaning they put in a forwarding order, we get a card back, or actually it now comes in a database file that gives us an updated address. And we don't automatically change it, but we will send the person a notice and saying, have you moved? Is this your new address? So we have contact with our voters on a regular basis. Department of Health, we bounce our database off of Department of Health for deceased voters, and the Department of Corrections for convicted felons. And I think it's important to understand that when I talk about our database, we have a statewide voter registration database. So it's actually housed at the Secretary of State's office, but maintained by each county. So it's real time. They provide a lot of tools, and we do a lot of extra things like pull envelopes after an election when they check the address change box that, that aren't required, but we like to keep our voter rolls as clean as possible. So when we do analyze the data, they gave us not quite 2,000 records. As I mentioned, uniform and overseas voters were 24.1% fell into this category. So, okay, they can be registered at an address and somebody else can be registered at that address too. We had 23% where, okay, their address had changed, but if they don't update their address in time and their ballot is forwarded to them, it's fine under Washington state law to go ahead and vote that ballot. There were people that the records were just fine. That was about 9%. And this is the one I loved. I'm not sure how they chose the data they pulled, but 43% of the people on the list they gave us had been inactive during the 2020 election. And what that means is we mailed something to them, it came back as undeliverable, so we don't know where they live, so they go on the inactive list. So we never mailed them a ballot. And the only way to come off that list is to call us with an updated address, or if they're inactive for 2 federal elections, then they're canceled. But with same-day voter registration in Washington state, that's really doesn't matter. And then, of course, we had canceled voters as well. So we scoured the entire list. We didn't find one single anomaly. But if you listen to Glenn Morgan on his videos, it's like, well, they said they didn't find anything, but they're lying. No evidence, but that's what he says. And fraud has repeatedly been disproven across the country, and that Arizona audit went on forever. But these are some of the headlines by some conservative or right-leaning publications, Reuters, who I love Reuters, but USA Today, Newsweek, even in Michigan, they found nothing, yet they're still in Michigan trying to audit more and more counties, which just blows my mind that the media is picking this up and isn't really realizing the history of what's happened in the last couple of years. Here are some more headlines. Forbes, Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is just, I don't know what's going on in Pennsylvania, but there was no fraud. And a new study finds that voting by mail does not increase the risk of voting fraud. And I hate the way they phrase that, because in my opinion, vote by mail is the most secure voting method there is, because we compare the signature against the signature we have on file. Now, the new landscape, and this is, I think, what was disturbing today, watching that coverage. I was just watching the news when I got home from work. There have been a lot of death threats, and 3 states have, passed bills to protect election workers. We've had one up for 3 years. It hasn't passed yet, but we're going to go at it from the back door and put it in some cleanup language for public, or I don't know which committee it is, but because there's no reason that it shouldn't be a crime in Washington state. They cover cyber threats, but cyber threats are a tiny bit of the threats that are coming. And I have been threatened. I was threatened a couple of weeks after the general election in 2020. And I can tell you, I looked over my shoulder for a long time. I changed my license plate, which used to be please vote, because it was causing road rage on the freeway, which I'd had that license plate for a long time. And I got rid of it. And now I'm fine on the freeway. But I want to go up. Sorry. But I'm happy to say that the FBI has stood up a task force to combat threats. And I heard a couple of days ago that they finally had their first conviction of somebody that threatened an election official. So that's really nice to hear. But, you know, if you listen to some of the testimony today, I mean, the people will never go back to work in elections because they're not comfortable. And people are leaving the profession in droves. Our Secretary of State left. That's a perfect example. So I think it's important to see, how do we deal with misdis and malinformation? And, you know, we monitor likely locations of misinformation, and we work with the press. We'll have a meeting with the Olympian and any other media outlet that'll talk to us, you know, radio stations, just to talk to them about what we see coming up in the election, and how we will communicate with them if something that surfaces is fake, and we ask them to please call us before you just go print something as truth. You know, run it by us and let us confirm whether it's true or not, and most of the time it's not. But we really work to have a quick turnaround when we do see things, and hours matter. So we actually have an email address where people can report disinformation to my office if they see it out there. And I think it's important when you're reading, I've really gotten disciplined about this. When I read something, it's like, I don't know. You know, I really check the source and the author. I'll Google the author, and you can tell a lot about the author and what comes up in that Google search. I also look for, you know, what are the supporting sources? Do they have information from MIT or some reputable source? And then you also have to check your biases and emotions. I mean, there were some times when I thought, oh, this can't be true. And, you know, I did a Google search and did the research, and it's like, okay, well, that happened, but, you know, there are checks and balances, and you know, everything fixes itself. So, you know, what's happening now, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, is, you know, all the misinformation and disinformation, they're really focusing on issues that divide us, just like, you know, stop the steal. And it's amazing how polarized we've become. But what's really different is, with this huge disinformation campaign about stop the steal, it really started top down, but then it takes off because the people, you know, down below get excited. So then it starts bottom up. So it just meets and spreads. And it's just truly amazing what people believe, and the fact that such a huge percentage in this country really do believe that the election was stolen, because there's nothing further from the truth. And for influence that continues, they did an amazing job with fake information that would divide us about the vaccine. So a lot of that campaign was coming from Russia and China, because there's nothing more that they want is to destabilize this country, which, you know, I never thought I would be in this place, but we hang out a lot with Department of Homeland Security at all the conferences we go to. They are at every single one. And we actually hear more than we probably want to know. But it's really frightening, the misinformation, both domestic and foreign, that is out there. You know, critical race theory, that's not taught in grade schools. Look how that took off. I mean, that's a college level course, and it's a good course. But so following the 2020 election, what became clear to me is that transparency was really important. We're never going to convince people who distrust the system with words or saying that's not how it goes. It goes like this, this, and this. The only way we felt that we could combat this is to actually get people into our ballot processing center. So I put a full page ad in our voters pamphlet. This is exactly what it is. This goes out to every single household in the county. And we invited people to come down. And then we also put out a press release before our logic and accuracy test. And it worked. At our logic and accuracy test in 2019, we had 45 observers. Most of them were distrusters. They would, stop the steal people. I answered questions for an hour and a half. And some went away really convinced that, okay, I trust the system. Others never will. It was really, I was pleased with the attendance. And we've also had a very robust observer training. If you ever want to come down and observe the process, I mean, it's pretty fascinating how it works. So I really encourage you to do so. And also it's very important for us to have observers on both sides of the aisle, because these people could come in there and make up all kinds of stories, right? We need both sides here, just like we have both sides represented in our workforce. So what we communicate to observers is ballot boxes are secure. We had a car, an SUV, purposefully ram one of our drop boxes. It knocked the box over. The RV was high centered, or SUV was high centered, totaled the SUV, didn't even dent our drop box, scratched it up a little bit. There were tire treads. This was at the city of Lacey, and Public Works just stood it up the next day, bolted it back down. We went and got the ballots, and we had to powder coat it after the election. Sorry, guys, I'm playing with my mouse too much. So they're super secure. They're all welded. There's no rivets or anything like that. We also always have 2 employees with the ballots. So teams of 2 that go pick them up. That ensures a chain of custody. And again, I mentioned the signature verification. That's really critical. And our signature checkers, they're not just, people who come in, okay, you compare the signatures. We have training every year with the Washington State Patrol Fraud Division. So they're trained, and most of our signature checkers have been with us for years. And once that happens, then we separate the ballots from the outer envelope from the secrecy envelope. And that is the simple process we do to protect the secrecy of your vote. So I want to talk about why our elections are so secure, not just in Washington State, but the country. And this is really important to know. And I hope that you'll tell this story when people start bringing up stop the steal stuff. I mean, in the United States, we have a very decentralized system. So if anybody ever says we need to all have the same system, no, we don't, because this is what really keeps us secure. I have a different tabulation system than King County, Lewis County, Clark County. So nobody could ever go in and just hack one thing, because we're all very decentralized. Nothing is connected to the internet anywhere. As much as people want to say it is, it's not. It's called air gapped, and they may be networked together. Like my ballot scanners and my tabulation system are networked, but it's an internal network, and it's not connected to the outside or the county network at all. And we've worked hard since 2017, when elections was deemed critical infrastructure, to really make sure that we were doing everything we could to secure our systems. We've had physical security audits, we've had cybersecurity audits. One of the things we did in our ballot processing center is we put in, USB ports in all the computers, right? Most of our computers that are key, like tabulation, are locked up and sealed. But like our signature scanning stations, we put in what are called USB blockers, because those are open, but there's no way anybody could put a USB drive in those. And even if they did, our signature checking stations, the only thing they can do is check signatures. They're what they call hardened. So they take every single component off the PC, except what you need to do for that task. So all they can get to is signatures on those signature checking PCs. They can't go anywhere else, not to the internet, not to the local network. And we continue to work with Department of Homeland Security. We're working with them on the design or expansion and retrofit of our ballot processing center. So they're involved at the design phase. Elections are run in a very bipartisan manner. I have Republicans and Democrats who work for me. We have auditors across the state who are Democrats, Republicans, independents. We all have one thing in common, is we are passionate about the process and the integrity of the process. And our elections are incredibly transparent. So we met with the architect today looking at our new space, which is going to be wonderful. We have to have it done by 2024. But it's one big open space. We want people to be able to see from one end to the other. And offices, there are windows everywhere. We were talking about our tabulation room because we really need to lock our tabulators up, or our ballot scanners. You know, there are going to be windows on all four sides, so you can look in. We live literally in a fishbowl. There's no office that is behind four closed walls. And, you know, election administrators, this is a profession. We're on the job all year long. We may hire extra people during general elections, but it is a profession. I've been doing this work for 26 years. My elections manager has 23 years. My election supervisor has 20 years. The next in line has 12 years. I mean, people either get in and out of this industry or they're in for life, because we really feel and believe in our souls that we are the gatekeepers of democracy. And this work that we do is very important. And I think now more than ever, we feel that way. So as a group, as an association, at least in Washington State, we are as tight can be. And I was just selected to be on the board of our national association, and it's the same all across the country. You know, I go to all of the conferences now, you know, as a board member, and talk to people from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, Michigan, Iowa, Arizona, everywhere. And we are the same. And to be honest, most people that do this work, think about the makeup of the states, red states versus blue. Most of the people that do this work across the country are Republicans. So, and yeah, they're just like me. So we really need people to help us tell our story. You know, we do the audits. They don't have to tell us to do the audits. They're already being done, and they have been for decades. It's all hype, but people are believing it, and it's creating a lot of distrust in our elections. So what I really want to do is, you know, invite you all down to our ballot processing center. I love to give tours where I will actually walk with you and explain everything that is happening in the election center or ballot processing center. It will be called the election center. Because it truly is fascinating. And you can see from this picture, this is how transparent it is. These are our ballot inspectors that are removing the secrecy envelopes from the outer envelopes, and then they're required to look at the front and back of the ballots to ensure that there's nothing on it, like a stray mark or coffee stains or food that would cause our ballot scanners to count it in a way that wasn't intended by the voter, because we're a voter intent state. So we have the best laws in the country in Washington State, in my opinion. So I hope you'll come down and see us sometime and really help spread the word. And if people doubt it, tell them to come down. We love the doubters. It takes a little more time with them, but they walk away, many of them, feeling good about our processes. So I would be happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Mary, there is actually a couple of questions in the chat that we wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to address. One of those questions is from Madeline Hall, and Madeline asks, if we see something false as in terms of information on Facebook or Twitter, who should we report that to?
If it's about elections, feel free to report it to us at Disinfo. But there's also under the three dots at the top, you can actually report it as being wrong or fake or bad. I wish I had that in front of me, but you can actually just Google how do you report to Facebook, but you can also report to us in disinfo@co.thurston.wa.us, and we will deal with it.
Wonderful. And then we have, let's see, we've got another question in there from Grace. Grace asks, how should we engage in meaningful conversations with people who believe in or are participating in disinformation campaigns about election security?
Well, that last slide, tell them to come down and view it themselves. Talk about how decentralized the process is. There's no way there could be collusion. And there are members of both political parties that conduct these elections. Most states require there be a Democratic judge and a Republican judge at polling places, for example. We don't register by party, but I work really hard to recruit from both parties. In fact, if anybody wants a really interesting, uplifting, feel-good job in 2024, we always hire new people at our ballot processing center. Doesn't pay a whole bunch, but it's meaningful work. It's just a few hours, you know, as much as you want it to be, really. But people who work in our facility become our best ambassadors, and so do our observers, even the Republican observers. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Rory asks, Mary, can you speak to the impact on our elections workers and what more can be done to support them here locally?
You know, we've so far been fortunate in Washington State. There have been a handful of people in my position that have received threats, but it hasn't filtered down. I think what you could do to really support us is if you're ever talking to legislators, you know, encourage them to pass legislation that will make threatening election officials a crime and a felony. Because if, you know, that's the only recourse we have. And if something like that doesn't exist, there's no deterrent. And that's what's happened. That's what happened in Georgia.
Awesome. And then Dan asks, do you have a quick and simple messaging package on all of this? If this presentation is it, or at least the last couple of slides you were shown, can we get a copy of it?
Sure, I'd be happy to share that. Just let me know. Email me at my office of who you'd like me to email that to. I'd be happy to. And let me ask Emmett if we have things like that. That's a really great idea. We could easily put something together. So what would it look like? It would, so a citizen's guide, help me phrase this, citizen's guide to what? Combating.
To accurate information about elections or something like that.
Election security.
I like CATS, Citizens Guide to Election Security.
Ah,
Could I suggest you say resident instead of citizen, because some people are kind of sensitive, because non-citizens, if they're residents, can they vote, right?
non-citizens can't vote, no. And they don't vote, just so you know. There's no proof of that. They can be deported. It's, and it eliminates their path to citizenship if they're caught voting. So believe me, the number of times that through motor voter at DOL, people have accidentally gotten registered, they panic. They come into our office and they ask for certificates, certified certificates that they never voted and they're no longer registered, and we provide them. So that's a common thing. So for people to say that all these non-citizens are voting, no, they're not. Yeah, no, they're not. There's no proof. If there was proof, it'd be everywhere. And you hear all of these, you know, accusations, but there is no proof. And, you know, there has been campaign fraud, which happened in North Carolina. I was actually on a panel with the attorney general that prosecuted that case. And what that was, it was ballot harvesting. That's where that phrase came from. It was a congressional race, and the campaign manager was going to neighborhoods of people that he knew had received absentee ballots and saying, you know, hey, you give me your absentee ballot, you know, we can get that in for you. And I don't know how they convinced him to give it to them like unmarked. Maybe it was a whole ballot packet. I don't know, but they were caught. They overturned the election and they were prosecuted. So. Yes, I see, I'm an election observer in Clallam County and the process is the same. You are absolutely correct. We do it the same all across the state and really all across the country. You could go into Colorado and you would see them doing the exact same thing. You know, you're with Shuna in Clallam County, she's doing the exact same thing because we all follow the same rules and whack. So I like to say RCWs are our policies, and Washington Administrative Code are our procedures. Because so everybody does do it the same way, which is good. And we share best practices when we come up with good ideas, and the Secretary of State's office is, active, and they review us, and they, will recommend best practices. We have to toot my own horn because I have an amazing staff. I mean, we're known as one of the best, election offices in the state, and I like to think the country. But my elections manager, so I won Auditor of the Year in 2020. My elections manager won Election Employee of the Year this year. So I'm very proud of that. And I would have been mad. I told her I would have been so mad if you didn't get that. So she's great. She helps a lot of people across the state. We, when people have questions or they need help with this or that, we're there because we are a community.
Grace has a question. She's going to be living internationally during the fall, and she wanted to know how she can vote absentee during the 2022 election.
Okay, there are a couple ways. Are you going to be in one place or traveling around?
I'm going to be in Vienna in one place, in Austria.
Okay, so you could either have a ballot mailed to you, and you're going to want to, if you know your address or where you're going to live, get that in right away, because we mail those ballots 45 days prior to the election. If it doesn't get to you for some reason, you can also go online and just go to our website. There are online ballots that you can download, and it has all the issues specific to your ballot. And you can vote that. And because you're overseas, you can actually scan that and return it electronically. But don't forget to return the oath. We still need your signed declaration. But it's really ingenious how this was designed. So they tell you the order to put your packet together. So you put your ballot, then you put a cover sheet, then you put your oath. So we verify the oath, we take that away, and that cover sheet protects the secrecy of your vote, right? So it's the simple things, but we're very creative in this industry, because that was, how are we going to protect their secrecy? How are we going to protect the secrecy? And they're just simple things. So.
Thank you so much. That really helps.
We have another question about what kinds of cybersecurity threats do we have at the county level and at the state level?
Mm-hmm. It's really bad everywhere, and it's really scary. So in 2017, when we became critical infrastructure, and the first conference that I heard the Department of Homeland Security speak at, I was like all over them. It's like, how can we get these services? Because all of the services they do are free. They'll come in and do an assessment, see where your vulnerabilities are. Have you installed all the patches? I mean, my IT department wasn't thrilled with this, but I was one of the first people to have him come in, because when I called him, he just so happened to have a cancellation. So he was like there the next week. So we signed up for all of these scanning resources, but the state and federal government has really stepped up and done a lot. Every county has installed what's called an Albert sensor. And what that is it's I don't know if I want to call it a device, because it's not really a physical device, but it sits between the county and the internet, and it's monitored by the Department of Homeland Security. So they will pick up if there are IP addresses that are coming from Russia, for example, because IP addresses, apparently they know what country they originate in, which is pretty fascinating. So we have that monitored. We also did had the state auditor's office come in and do a cybersecurity audit. So I had both of those done prior to the 2020 election. So I feel pretty good in Thurston County, and every county in the state, I believe, has an Albert sensor. And I'm really impressed with our new Secretary of State, Stephen Hobbs, because what he's doing, you have a lot of little counties out there that really can't afford the cybersecurity people. So he's actually standing up, I want to say it's going to be a 12-person cybersecurity task force that is going to provide resources to smaller counties across the state that don't have the resources to do that themselves. So they'll come in and, help them set it up. And I think there are grants to pay for it. And so I feel really good about Washington State, but we had our state election conference week before last, and listening to Department of Homeland Security and the threat landscape, and it always gets worse before federal elections. And there used to be this website out there where you could actually see the traffic hitting Washington State, the cyber traffic. And it was just amazing where it was coming from. It was coming from China and the Middle East and Russia, hitting a lot on Washington, D.C., and then all the major cities. So it's real, but there's more activity than you would ever know. And it's really critical. The Secretary of State's office, it bothers me when I hear people talk about, well, the Secretary of State's office or the chief election official, but Secretary of States really don't conduct elections. It's the local election officials that conduct elections. The Secretary of State's role is really cyber hygiene and cyber security and keeping our voter registration database safe, because that is on the internet. I mean, so how it's set up in Washington State, every single computer that connects to our statewide voter registration database has to be whitelisted. So I couldn't go to my personal PC, even with my credentials, and log into that system. It has to be one of my work PCs where the IP address has been whitelisted. And then there are a tremendous amount of security beyond that. So more than you would ever know. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but in 2020, Washington State got hit pretty badly in August prior to the election. We had some scares in the Secretary of State's office. They shut down their email, but they didn't get penetrated. It was just a lot of traffic that coming at us, and they obviously got a fingernail in the door or something, because they shut stuff down and we were on high alert. And this was probably 3 weeks before the election. But, we came through it fine. And I have total confidence that we're doing everything we can to keep our system secure, but it's a nonstop effort. You can't stop. And one of the things that I did after 2017 was stood up a cybersecurity forum, and then we called it task force. So now we all in the county, we're not 100%, but we're getting there. We all have multi-factor authentication. So it's something you have and something So you can't, even if somebody knew your password, they would have to have your cell phone or whatever you use to, prove that. You can use little key fobs. I just use my phone where, it'll ping you and you have to say, yes, it's me. So, and somebody asked what my email is, so I'm going to put it in the chat. Okay, there you go. So that is my email address. And yeah, feel free to reach out. And I know some of you are from other counties, but I really encourage you to, call your local election office and go in and watch their processes. And it would be amazing if you did a tour, because everybody is essentially doing everything the exact same way.
Well, if no one has any further questions, I'd like to go ahead and wrap this thing up just so that we can get everyone out of here on the hour. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much to Mary for being here this evening. That presentation was invaluable, and we are grateful for your leadership on the issue of election security and your representation of the Thurston County community and beyond. And to everyone else that's at this meeting, thank you so much for being here today. This presentation has made the problems with election disinformation all the more clear. It is important now more than ever to fight for free and fair elections because they are the cornerstone of our democracy.